All right, so this video is going to be on communication, right? And how to become a world-class communicator. If you can communicate at a world-class level, that's going to massively increase your conversion rates through your closing conversations. So it's really about becoming the best. And the first thing about becoming a world-class communicator is that you have to take a look at what most people ignore in communication, which is the 95% of communication. So when we look at the ways that we can communicate, there's only three ways that we can communicate from one person to another. One of them is we can go through the modality of words. We can say what we're going to say through the words that we choose. The second thing we can do is we can change our tonality. And you'll have noticed throughout this entire section of this program, like I've been making such a huge emphasis on demonstrating what good tonality is that you want to use in your closing conversations through using the tone of certainty and also just, changing my tone so that it's engaging for you to watch these longer videos as well. So tone is important. Another one is body language, right? So my body language can also be a type of way that I can communicate with another person and how that I change my body language. So sometimes it might be that I'm lied down to communicate that I'm tired, or I'm jumping up and down to communicate that I'm excited, or I am using my hands right now to really be a little bit more animated to just show that I can tell a story through that, right? So there's different ways that I can use body language to communicate. And it's important that you not only know how to speak these words and speak this tone, speak that body language, but also you can understand it. You can understand what other people are saying with their body language. Like a great book that I would highly recommend that you read is a book by Joe Navarro called What Everybody is Saying, which will teach you about body language by an inspector who had literally been studying it for 30 years of his life. So definitely give that one a read for sure. Um, and the reason why I definitely recommend this is because when you look at the ways in which we can communicate, like the majority of it is not the words that we use, which come from our conscious mind, right? This is a subconscious thing that happens in how people communicate with their tone and their body language. So if you can learn body language and study that, that automatically sets you apart from the majority of people who are not able to use their body language to communicate and not to do it effectively. So when we look at why this is subconscious and how it is, it's like when you were a kid, or if you know any children who communicate, notice that you don't have to teach them to have their mouth open when they're shocked. They just know to do it because it's the first language that they learn. It's body language. It's all unconscious, right? Then it moves towards it being about tone as they start to speak a little bit more and use these words to communicate, but in a way where it's not all put together. They're also expressing how they feel. And then finally, it's with words, which is 7%. And that's the little bit of an add on that has come from the newer part of our mind, which is the neocortex, where neo means new, the newer part of our mind that has only evolved recently as human beings to then throw in these words. And so it's literally thousands of years of our ancestors who have helped us to become masters when it comes to using our body language to communicate and our tone, which is why it's so much more effective in using both your body language and tone when you're communicating as a world-class communicator. So here's an example is that you ever seen Hulk, right? The movie. In Hulk, you've got this superhero who he transitions from being this guy who's not really communicating whatsoever with just his words to then fully communicating and expressing how he feels with his body language and how he's frowning, he's clenching, he's fighting, and he's slamming doors and he's freaking jumping around, all this stuff. He's smashing stuff. This is his body language that he's using. With his tone has gone a little bit higher in terms of the volume in how he is now shouting with his tone. He's not just speaking, he's shouting. And the words that he's using, well, he doesn't really say much. It's just more like noise. But the words that somebody could use is that I'm angry. But really saying that I'm angry on its own is nowhere near as effective as communicating how you genuinely feel when you start smashing shit up and fighting and slamming and making absolute chaos. Right? So this is how you want to look at it. If you really want to put a message out there, you got to be able to use your body language and also use your tone. Now, like I said, 95% of communication is subconscious. 95% of our minds are subconscious in how we operate and we behave. So the conscious mind is responsible for 5% of our behavior, whereas the subconscious mind is responsible for 95% of our behavior. And if we understand this, then we understand how, as we're communicating, we should not be focused on the 5%, we should be focused on the 95. And what this looks like is that the 5% is the thinking mind, right? It's the conscious thoughts that we have that come from our senses. The thinking mind can accept, reject, and originate ideas. It contains 6 intellectual factors, including your imagination, intuition, reason, will, memory, and perception. When information is impressed with repetition and emotion, it is passed onto the subconscious mind. So looking at it like this, you're able to discern when you're actually using more so the conscious mind as opposed to using the subconscious mind. And when we look at the subconscious is not the thinking mind, but it is the emotional mind. The emotional mind works in feelings. So if you're a great communicator, you're not the person who communicates from logic, from reason, from memory, from all of these things. You are actually the person who can communicate primarily from your feeling. How you feel from your heart to another person's heart. It's the third level of value, communication, your heart to the person's heart. So if it works in feelings, then we have to be able to feel before we speak. We have to be able to feel as we listen. If we're really going to communicate well, because it's got to be 2 ways. The third thing that the subconscious mind is responsible for is that it must accept all information impressed upon it through repetition or emotion. The emotional mind also controls the vibration of the body. So looking at it in terms of the actions of the body, this is the doing part, right? So it's like you think, you feel, and you behave. Think, feel, and do. So this is the doing part of our personality. Our vibration of the body is decided by thoughts held in the subconscious mind. It controls the action and behavior part of our personality. So if you want to influence somebody to act in a certain way, then you have to be able to transfer a feeling to them so that they act in that way. They act in a manner which is, I'm going to go for it right now because I'm 100% certain. You have to transfer that feeling to them. So yeah, that's something really that you got to understand when it comes to communication. The 95% is what you want to focus on if you want to become world-class. The next thing is that with communication, a lot of people don't understand that listening is actually the most important part. It's not about the speaking. So one of the things that Quincy Jones has said is that I learned really early on why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's because you're supposed to use the 2 ears more than the 1 mouth. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. And if we even look at the word listen, the clue is in the word. When we move the letters around, it actually spells silent, which means that if you are speaking, or if you're rushing to speak, or if you're speaking in your mind whilst another person is saying some things, you're not truly listening. You have to be fully present, and it be that the only thing that is speaking at that point is them. And you're feeling what's going on in terms of what they're sharing from their heart too, right? So you got to be able to communicate, because when we look at communication, the clue again is in the word. It's co-communication, right? It's communication. And if we look at what co means, co is just anything together, jointly, mutual, which means that there has to be more than one thing. If something is joint together, then they had to have been separate previously. So the communication is in the bringing of people together, in the union, right? The union, to unify another person, is to bring together, which is the second level of value. So when it's communication, It's unification, but a higher level, because you're bringing people more so together in the way that you can use your communication, right, as a skill. So communication, people will never remember the details of what you've said. I've been to so many events before where I don't actually remember the majority of what the speakers have said, but I remember every single time how they made me feel. And you will, if you're good at communicating, you will make your prospects, you will make your audience know and remember how you made them feel. So one of the most powerful things that you can do as a speaker for your audience is to actually pause during your speaking. Because when you're speaking, the audience can hear your voice. But when you pause, you allow them time and space to hear the higher power's voice. And it's impossible for you to outmatch the impact that the higher power can have on them. No matter how great you think you may be, no matter how great you think that you are in terms of the vocabulary, no matter how great you think you are in terms of the message that you have to share, I guarantee you this: you touching their hearts versus the higher power touching their hearts is no competition whatsoever. So don't even try to compete. Instead, work alongside the higher power. So the thing that I would recommend for you, if you really want to be able to take your listening to a whole different level when it comes to your sales conversations, is you just simply read this small chapter in the book, How to Sell Yourself. And the chapter is called Learn to Listen. It's chapter 6. It's the best part of the entire book. And I guarantee you, it's going to change the game for you in your sales conversations. Like currently, if you're having sales conversations, closing conversations, I guarantee if you haven't read this chapter, you're losing sales right now. This chapter alone, if you're closing sales conversations, can take it from like 20 to 40% in terms of conversion rates, for real. You can double them, I promise you. So yeah, that's the listening part of communication. The next part is what we call Socratic dialogue, right? I mentioned this before in another video, but Socratic dialogue, I'm going to explain over here what it really is. It's a term that has actually been created by the philosopher Socrates, and it's not a fixed procedure, but it's more so a systematic, disciplined, challenging, and provocative way of being able to have conversations which are different from just common questioning and simple conversations. And so a lot of people want to get that script. They want to get the simple answer. Socratic dialogue is not like that. Socratic dialogue is for both parties who are involved. It's an enjoyable experience that puts you into the flow state, because for both parties it's actually quite challenging, and it's very interesting, right? It's something that keeps your attention and makes you not want to leave speaking about that particular subject. And so this is an open dialogue between a facilitator and a person/group. I've seen this happen where some of the best communicators I've ever come across have actually done this in group scenarios where they're asking questions to the audience and getting them really involved, which keeps us super engaged. It's not a teaching method in the conventional way where it's about undeniable facts and truths or memorization that we have in school, where you have to memorize a syllabus to pass a certain exam. This is not what this is. What this is being able to bring out the best in the students by asking them certain questions that can elicit the truths from within them. And it's an open teaching with shared dialogues between people where both are responsible for pushing the dialogue forward through questioning. And it would mostly be the person who is the facilitator that is asking the questions rather than the person of the group. That tends to be the dynamic. So that's Socratic dialogue. And that's something you want to practice. You want to definitely get good at with your prospects, in that you can ask them questions, be that facilitator for them. The next thing is storytelling. So the greatest people who are the ones that are great at closing are the ones who are the best storytellers. Like if you're a good closer, you're just a professional storyteller. That's really it. Think about how human beings are so wired to respond well to good storytelling. So much so that they're willing to go and pay money to go and watch a story played out on a TV screen. Like that's exactly how we're wired. And this comes from the evolution of human beings in terms of how we invented well, we didn't invent fire, but we discovered fire. And as we discovered it, we started to sit around at nighttime with this fire, and people would share stories of how they hunted and how they were able to, get what they did in terms of their achievements around this fire, or what they've been through in terms of trials and tribulations. This was something that started back then. And since then, human beings have become just better and better at telling stories over time. So you have to be able to utilize this, because again, you're going to be able to, through storytelling, you're going to communicate to that 95% with the 95% as well from yourself. And so facts tell, but stories sell. So what you want to do is you never want to make a point, ideally, without telling a story. And you never want to tell a story without making a point in your sales conversation, your closing conversations. Every single time that you have a point to make about a certain objection that you're going to handle, that's why we use the feel, felt, found. Because in the found, we can tell about a story where somebody actually went through the hero's journey, and they started out just where you were, and now they overcame that to experience the results that they got right now. That story inspires the person to see themselves within it and feel as though I can do that as well. There's no reason why I can't either, because I was in that same position. One of the books that I would highly recommend that you read to become a better storyteller is The Storyteller's Secret by Carmine Gallo. He teaches how to tell stories like some of those people who, the TEDx speakers, inspirational leaders of their organizations, such as Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, things like that. And you're going to learn how to tell stories in just the best way possible. And it's one of the skill sets, which is such a high paying skill set. Even if you're not doing a closing environment, right? What if you just told stories and you're a director of movies? You get what I'm saying? So telling stories is super important. So yeah, that's pretty much everything for the communication. If you can get all of these things in, the listening, the storytelling, the 95% of communication, I guarantee you, people are going to respond to you in conversation, give you feedback like, wow, that was such an incredible conversation. Thank you so much. Like, it's been amazing. And I really wish we can do this again sometime. So focus on this and make sure that in your conversations you're having with your prospects, the majority of what's being said is coming from them and not from you. And you're the facilitator, you know who you are in the conversation, and you'll be able to get some great results. If you have any more questions about this, let me know and I can help you out. But this should be a great foundation. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.